They said I was a burden. They said I ruined the family name. And the night they threw me out, they told me I would never amount to anything. 10 years later, I bought their house. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you love stories about silent comebacks, long-term revenge, and proving people wrong without saying a word, you're in the right place. Before we start, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It really helps the channel grow and keeps stories like this coming. Now let me tell you what really happened. I wasn't always the disappointment. There was a time when my father introduced me proudly to his friends. "There goes my son! He's building something big!" Back then, I believed it too. But ambition doesn't guarantee survival. When my startup failed, it didn't collapse in one dramatic explosion. It died slowly. Investors pulled out, clients delayed payments, bills stacked up like quiet accusations. I kept telling myself it was temporary. "It's just a phase," I whispered in the dark some nights. "Winners push through." But winners also run out of money. At 27, I moved back into my childhood bedroom. The same faded blue walls, the same cracked ceiling corner I used to stare at as a kid, imagining success. Except this time, I wasn't imagining anything. The house felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had. My older brother made sure I felt it. "So this is the CEO life?" he'd say at dinner, scrolling on his phone. My father wouldn't laugh, but he wouldn't defend me either. That silence was louder than insults. My mother tried, in small ways. Extra rice on my plate, quiet knocks before entering my room, but even she looked tired. One afternoon, while everyone was out, I opened the kitchen drawer looking for tape. That's when I saw them. Past due notices, mortgage warning letters, final reminders. My stomach dropped. "We're struggling too?" I muttered under my breath. Suddenly, the air felt heavier. I wasn't just a failure. I was weight. That night, the argument started over something small, electricity usage. "Do you know how high the bills are?" my brother snapped. "I'm applying everywhere," I shot back. "Applying isn't earning," my father said flatly. I felt heat rise in my chest. "Do you think I wanted this?" I asked. "Do you think I planned to fail?" My father stood up slowly, calm, controlled, final. "If you can't stand on your own, you don't belong in this house." The words didn't echo. They settled, heavy, permanent. I looked at my mother. She avoided my eyes. For a second, I waited for someone to say, "That's enough." No one did. Inside my head, something cracked. So this is it. This is what conditional love feels like. I packed in silence. A duffel bag, my laptop, 2 shirts, the framed photo from my graduation. I left that behind. As I stepped toward the door, my brother said, almost casually, "Maybe this will finally make you grow up." I wanted to scream, to argue, to defend the version of me that still believed I could fix everything. Instead, I nodded. Outside, the night air was humid. Streetlights flickered. A neighbor's TV laughter floated faintly through an open window. Life was moving on, just not mine. When the door closed behind me, it wasn't slammed. It clicked, soft, clean, decisive. I stood there for a moment, staring at the house I grew up in, the balcony where I studied for exams,
The driveway where my father once taught me how to ride a bike. Now it looked like a stranger's property. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel and let the silence sit. "They're right," one voice in my head whispered. "You failed." Another voice answered quietly, "Not yet." That night, I didn't cry. I made a promise. If I ever came back, it wouldn't be to ask for permission. It would be on my terms.
The first night in my car felt temporary. The second night felt real. By the end of the first week, I stopped telling myself it was just for now. I parked in different places every evening, behind a 24-hour supermarket, near a gym parking lot, once outside an office complex where security barely noticed me. I learned quickly that survival wasn't dramatic, it was strategic. You don't think about pride when you're calculating where to shower. A cheap gym membership became my lifeline, not for fitness, for access, shower, sink, electricity outlet. I'd stand there brushing my teeth, staring at myself in the mirror. "Don't look defeated," I'd whisper. "You're just rebuilding." But rebuilding from zero feels suspiciously like pretending. During the day, I worked whatever I could get: warehouse shifts, delivery driving, temporary event crew jobs. I said yes to everything. Sleep became fragmented. 4 hours here, 90 minutes there. My back ached constantly. Some nights, hunger sat heavier than exhaustion. I'd scroll through old photos on my phone, family dinners, birthday cakes, smiling faces. Were those real, or were they just easier times? Around month 3, doubt started talking louder. "You should call them. Just apologize. Ask to come back." My fingers hovered over my mother's contact more than once. But then I'd hear it again in my head. "If you can't stand on your own, you don't belong in this house." I didn't want to belong anymore. I wanted to stand. One rainy afternoon, while waiting for a delivery order, I sat in the driver's seat watching droplets race down the windshield. I realized something uncomfortable. I had chased the idea of success, not the discipline behind it. My startup failed because I built excitement, not foundation. That stung, but it was honest. So I changed strategy. Instead of dreaming big again, I focused small. I started spending my break times inside a public library, free Wi-Fi, quiet, warm. At first, I just applied for jobs. Then I started reading sales psychology, negotiation tactics, consumer behavior, real estate fundamentals, market cycles. I downloaded free PDFs, watched lectures, took notes in a cheap spiral notebook. No one clapped, no one noticed. That anonymity felt powerful. There's something dangerous about a person who has nothing left to protect. One evening, while closing up after a warehouse shift, a supervisor named Daniel pulled me aside. "You don't talk much, but you work like you're being watched." I almost laughed. "I am," I replied. He looked confused, but I meant it. I was being watched by the version of me who got thrown out, and I refused to let him be right. Months passed. I moved from sleeping in my car to renting a tiny room in a rundown apartment shared with 2 strangers. The walls were thin, the paint peeled, the mattress dipped in the middle, but it was a door I could lock. That mattered. One night, sitting on the edge of that sagging bed, I counted my savings. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time, the panic wasn't constant. It visited, but it didn't live with me anymore. Rock bottom has layers. At first, you think hitting it will break you. Then you realize something strange. There's stability at the bottom. No expectations, no image to maintain, no reputation to defend, just work. And in that quiet, I made another decision. I wouldn't chase applause anymore. I would build skills so sharp that opportunity couldn't ignore me. No announcements, no comeback speeches, just preparation. Because the next time I stepped into a room, I wouldn't be asking for a seat at the table. I'd be evaluating the table itself.
The job posting looked almost threatening. Commission only, no base salary, high performance expectation. Most people skipped it. I stared at it longer than I should have. No safety net, I muttered. Then I almost smiled. I didn't have one anyway. The office was on the 17th floor of a glass building downtown. Clean lobby, polished floors, people walking with purpose. I felt underdressed in my only decent shirt. In the elevator mirror, I adjusted my collar. "You've survived worse," I told myself quietly. "This is just another room." The interview was short. The manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, scanned my resume. "You failed before," she said bluntly. "Yes." She looked up, waiting. "I learned more from that than anything else," I added. Silence. Then she nodded once. "Most people here quit within 3 months," she said. "No salary, no excuses." "I won't quit," I replied. What I didn't say was, "I can't afford to." The first few weeks were brutal. Cold calls, rejection, hung-up lines, polite no's, rude no's. Every not interested felt like an echo of something familiar. You don't belong. But this time, I didn't retreat. I tracked everything. Scripts that worked, tonal shifts, objection patterns. I stayed late reviewing recordings of my own calls, wincing at mistakes. "You sound unsure," I'd think. "Control your pace. Stop asking for approval." Around week 6, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. One call lasted longer. One client asked questions. One deal closed. My first commission wasn't life-changing, but it was proof. I remember holding the check in the break room, fluorescent lights humming above me. My hands were steady. "You earned this," I told myself. That sentence felt foreign. Claire started noticing. "You're analytical," she said one evening as most of the team packed up early. "You don't chase, you position." "I'm tired of chasing," I answered honestly. She gave a faint smirk. "Good. Chasing smells desperate." That stuck with me. Around month 4, one of the top agents, Marcus, pulled me aside near the coffee machine. "You're climbing fast, but you're doing it the slow way." I raised an eyebrow. "There are ways to nudge clients," he continued carefully. "Frame numbers differently. Push urgency harder than reality." I knew what he meant. Nothing illegal, just slightly dishonest. "Everyone does it," he added. For a moment, temptation whispered. Faster money, faster growth, faster escape. Then another voice answered. "If you build it crooked, it collapses crooked." I shook my head. I'd rather close less than lose sleep. Marcus shrugged. "Suit yourself." A month later, compliance audited his deals. He was gone within weeks. That was the day I understood something important. Longevity beats speed. The atmosphere changes. By year 2, my desk wasn't near the back anymore. I wasn't loud, I wasn't flashy, but my numbers spoke. The office atmosphere felt different too. The same glass walls, but now when I walked in, reception greeted me by name. New hires asked for advice. One afternoon, I stayed late alone. The city lights flickered below the windows, cars moving like veins of light. I stood there, hands in pockets. "Remember the car you slept in?" I asked myself internally. I did. Every detail. The condensation on the windshield, the stiffness in my neck, the quiet shame. I didn't feel shame now. I felt control.
Within 4 years, I wasn't just closing deals. I was studying markets, watching neighborhood growth patterns, rental yields, foreclosure data. I invested small at first, a modest property in an overlooked area. It wasn't glamorous, peeling paint, old wiring, but numbers don't care about appearance. I renovated strategically, rented it out, cash flow, then another. Fix, improve, refinance, repeat. Quietly. No social media posts, no look at me now, just compounding. Meanwhile, news about my family drifted through distant relatives. My brother expanded too fast, leveraged heavily. My parents refinanced their mortgage. I listened without reacting, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Sitting in my apartment one evening, a real apartment now, clean, minimal, quiet, I reviewed property listings on my laptop. Rain tapped softly against the window. You're not building to prove them wrong, I reminded myself. A pause. Maybe at first I was. But somewhere along the way, the goal changed. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was independence. And independence is quieter than anger. That was the shift. I wasn't trying to get back into the house I was thrown out of. I was building a life where no one could ever remove me again.
It was a normal Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no music swelling in the background, no sense that fate was preparing something cinematic. I was at my desk, reviewing market alerts, when an automated notification popped up on my screen. Pre-foreclosure listing, residential property, auction scheduled in 21 days. I almost ignored it. Foreclosures were opportunities. I scanned dozens every week. Address, square footage, lot size. Then my eyes froze. I read the address again, slowly. No. My jaw tightened. It was my childhood home. The same street name I had written on countless forms growing up. The same house number I memorized before I knew my own ID number. For a moment, the office noise disappeared. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, conversations humming in the background. Everything blurred except that address. They refinanced, I thought. I remembered the past due notices I saw years ago in the kitchen drawer. I remembered the tight expressions, the tension. So it finally caught up. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. What are you feeling? I asked myself internally. Anger? Vindication? Satisfaction? None of it felt clean. Instead, there was something heavier. Finality. That house wasn't just property. It was memory. It was rejection. It was the night the door clicked shut behind me. I opened the listing details. Starting bid was lower than market value. The bank wanted it gone. Financially, it made sense. Emotionally, it was complicated. I closed the tab, then opened it again. For the next 2 days, I pretended I hadn't seen it. I went to meetings, closed deals, reviewed renovation plans on another property. But in quiet moments, the image of that house surfaced. The balcony, the driveway, the living room where I stood with a duffel bag. One evening, I drove there. I told myself it was just to assess the exterior condition, professional habit. The neighborhood looked smaller than I remembered. The trees taller, the paint slightly faded, the once neat lawn uneven in places. Lights were off. A foreclosure notice was taped near the gate. Seeing it physically, not digitally, did something to me. So it ends like this, I thought. Not with pride, not with reconciliation, with a bank notice. I stayed in the car, engine off, watching the house in silence. "You don't need this," one voice in my head said. "It's just bricks and wood." Another voice answered quietly, "It's unfinished." The next morning, I received an unknown number. I almost let it ring out. Hello? It was my aunt. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Her voice sounded hesitant. Have you heard about your parents? I kept my tone neutral. No. They're moving into a rental next week. The house, well, you know. So they were already leaving. This wasn't theoretical. It was happening. Are they okay? I asked, surprising myself. A pause. They're embarrassed. That word lingered. Embarrassed. I thanked her and ended the call. I sat there, phone still in my hand. Embarrassment is quiet. It isolates. It shrinks people. I knew that feeling intimately. For years, I carried it like a second skin. Now, it was theirs. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a strange, uncomfortable empathy. Back at my office, I reopened the listing. This time, I didn't look at it as a son. I looked at it as an investor. Location still solid, structural foundation good, market rebound in that district projected within 5 years. Objectively, it was a strong buy. Subjectively, it was closure. I picked up my phone and called my agent. I want full details on that foreclosure property, I said calmly. There was a brief silence on the other end. The one on... Yes, I interrupted gently. That one. You planning to flip it? I looked out the window at the skyline. City lights, glass towers, movement. No, I said after a pause. I'm planning to finish something. When I hung up, my reflection stared back at me from the dark computer screen. Years ago, I stood outside that house with nowhere to go. Now, I had the power to decide its future. The difference wasn't money. It was stability. I wasn't bidding out of anger. I wasn't bidding out of revenge. I was bidding because I could. And that, more than anything, changed everything.
Auction day didn't feel heroic. It felt procedural. A small conference room inside a bank building. Neutral walls, fluorescent lighting, foldable chairs arranged in uneven rows. A table at the front where a representative reviewed documents like this was just another Tuesday. To them, it was. To me, it wasn't. I arrived early, sat in the back, hands calm, expression neutral. Inside, something was shifting. That house doesn't define you, one voice reminded me. Then why are you here? Another asked. I didn't answer myself. A few investors trickled in, some familiar faces from previous auctions. They chatted casually about cap rates and distressed assets. No one looked at me twice. Good. I didn't want this to be emotional. I wanted it to be strategic. The bank representative began outlining terms, starting bid, payment window, legal disclaimers. The address was read aloud. Hearing it spoken in that sterile room felt strange, like a childhood memory dragged into a spreadsheet. Bidding opened. One hand went up, then another. The price climbed steadily, but not aggressively. I calculated quickly in my head. Renovation cost, rental projection, long-term appreciation. Still viable. Another bid. I lifted my hand. Calm, controlled, no hesitation. The room didn't react. It was just numbers. But inside me, memories flickered. The kitchen drawer with unpaid bills. My father's steady voice telling me to leave. The soft click of the door. The number rose again. For a brief second, doubt whispered, "You don't need this." I inhaled slowly. I'm not buying the past, I told myself internally. I'm buying control. I raised my hand again. Silence.
The competing bidder hesitated, checked his phone, whispered to someone beside him. Then he shook his head. Sold. The gavel wasn't dramatic, just a firm tap. And that was it. Years of emotional weight transferred through paperwork. After the auction, my real estate agent, Thomas, approached me while we finalized documents. "You were very determined about this one," he said casually. "Personal interest?" I kept my tone even. "Familiar area." He studied me for a second longer than comfortable. "You sure you're not overpaying for sentimental value?" There it was, the risk. I met his gaze. I said quietly, "If it was sentimental, I would have bought it years ago." He nodded slowly, not fully convinced, but satisfied enough. Paperwork signed, funds transferred. Keys would be available in 3 days. 3 days. That waiting period felt heavier than the bidding itself. When the bank finally handed over the keys, they did it without ceremony. A small metal ring, 2 worn keys. So ordinary. I drove there alone. No announcement, no witnesses. The house was empty now. My parents had already moved out. The gate creaked slightly as I pushed it open. The air smelled faintly of dust and old wood. Inside, the rooms echoed. No furniture, no photos, no signs of life. I walked slowly through each space. Living room, kitchen, hallway, my old bedroom. The blue paint was still there, faded. I stood in the center of that empty room. Is this it? I asked myself. No dramatic surge of triumph, no revenge fantasy playing out. Just quiet. I expected anger to resurface. It didn't. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Distance. The house no longer felt powerful. It felt small. The night I was thrown out, this place felt like the entire world rejecting me. Now it was just square footage, equity, opportunity. I walked back to the living room and stood where I once held my duffel bag. Different posture now, different bank balance, different man. You didn't come back to win, I told myself internally. You came back to close the chapter. I pulled out my phone and called a renovation contractor. Full interior refresh, I said. Modernize it, keep the structure, upgrade everything else. As I ended the call, sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, illuminating floating particles in the air. It felt symbolic, but not in a dramatic way, more like clarity. I didn't buy the house to throw anyone out. I didn't buy it to brag. I bought it because once upon a time, I was told I didn't belong here. Now, ownership wasn't emotional. It was legal. And that difference, that was everything.
They found out 2 weeks later. Not from me, from paperwork. Property ownership records aren't secrets for long, especially in a small circle of relatives who enjoy connecting dots. My phone rang on a Sunday afternoon. I knew who it was before I looked. I let it ring twice, then answered. Hello? My mother's voice was softer than I remembered. I heard you bought the house. Straight to it. Yes. Silence. Not hostile, not warm, just heavy. I didn't know, she said quietly. If I had known it was you. She didn't finish the sentence. Would it have changed anything? Would they have stayed? I didn't ask. It made financial sense, I replied evenly. There was a faint inhale on the other end, like she was searching for something deeper in my tone. Are you angry with us? She asked. That question surprised me. Years ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now, I was, honestly, but not anymore. Another silence, this one different. Relief mixed with regret. We did what we thought was right. Your father believed you needed to be forced to stand." I almost laughed. Forced. That was one word for it, but I didn't argue. Because here's the truth I had learned. Intent doesn't erase impact, but holding anger doesn't build wealth. A few days later, my father asked to meet. We chose a neutral place, a quiet cafe in the late afternoon. Minimal crowd, soft instrumental music in the background. When he walked in, he looked older, not dramatically, just shorter. We sat across from each other. No handshake, no hug. "I heard you're doing well," he said. "I'm stable," I replied. He nodded slowly. For a moment, neither of us knew how to bridge the years between us. Finally, he leaned back and said the closest thing to vulnerability I had ever heard from him. "I didn't think you would recover like this." Recover, like I had been an accident. "I didn't either," I admitted. That surprised him. Then he said it. "I guess you did all right." That was his apology. That was his pride. That was all he was capable of giving. And strangely, it was enough. Not because I needed his approval anymore, but because I no longer depended on it. Before we stood up to leave, he cleared his throat. "We're renting a small place now. It's fine. Temporary." He hesitated. If you ever plan to sell the house, let me know." There it was. The universe testing my ego one last time. Years ago, I would have savored that moment, made him feel what I felt. Instead, I answered calmly, "I'm not selling." He nodded. "Good investment?" Yes, that was the truth, but not the whole truth. I wasn't keeping it out of spite. I was keeping it because it represented something bigger than family conflict. It represented independence. After we stood up to leave, I sat in my car for a few minutes. No dramatic music, no tears, just stillness. "You came back differently," I told myself internally. Not louder, not richer, different. I drove past the house that evening. Renovations were nearly finished. Fresh paint, clean lines, modern fixtures. The old blue bedroom walls were gone. Transformed, just like me. Soon it would be rented out, generating income, appreciating over time, an asset on paper. But more importantly, it represented something intangible. I was never the failure they believed I was. I was just unfinished. They disowned me at my lowest, but hitting bottom didn't destroy me. It removed comfort. It removed illusion. It removed dependency. And in that empty space, I built something stronger. Not revenge, not bitterness, structure. Now, when I think about that night the door clicked shut behind me, I don't feel pain. I feel gratitude. Because sometimes losing your place at the table forces you to build your own house. And this time, no one can tell me I don't belong.
Sometimes the people who give up on you are the ones who taught you how to survive. Being disowned didn't break me. It removed the safety net and forced me to build wings. Success isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your value when others try to define it for you. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.